by some miracle, I qualify for the Diamond Sculls. The draw comes out. I'm up against a guy called Malcolm Howard. He won the Beijing Olympics in the Canadian 8. The guy's the size of a bus. I'm kind of signing autographs right in front of him while he's trying to warm up for this race. And then all of a sudden we're boating through this massive tunnel of people. He came up to me after the race and he says, I was sat on the start line. I was thinking, shit, this guy's a big deal.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. It is with great pleasure that I can announce to you that we have the one and only Mr. People's Champion in the house. Please welcome Mr. Dave Bell.
Thank you for having me.
This is a good one. You go by many names. One that a lot of people know is the People's Champion, and we'll get into that in a minute as to why. But just to introduce you, so 2008 Henley Royal Regatta winner. We were in that boat together, Thames Cup. 2019 boat race winner with Cambridge. Also FISU, so World Student Games, 2012 in the single, 5th. Obviously, a few runs up the track in the Diamond Sculls as well, which again we'll get into. And Dave just wanted to make sure that most notably we said that the Peterborough Regatta mixed 8 course record holder.
And also fastest time of the day that year, I might add.
Close. That's the one that you hold close to your heart.
Yeah, it was a close ding-dong with Derby Rowing Club Men's 8, if I remember rightly.
What, they weren't mixed, and you were?
Yes, straight men's 8 against, we had the mighty Emma McDonald in our crew, so we were an unstoppable force at the time.
We did for the Commonwealth Regatta in 2014, there was a mixed 8 competition, and Scotland had been like training in it for like 2 weeks, but all the other teams just turned up, got given an 8, and you just put like four and four in, and we like literally did them by like half a foot on the photo finish. It was good fun.
But it's a great fun event. It's not long until they have it at Henley Royal.
Henley TMV. Let's get it in there first.
Perfect.
It's a good laugh though. Cool. Right. So I guess let's get into it. So first off would probably be to find out how you got into rowing yourself.
Sure. So I started very late.
Yeah.
So I'm one of the few people I know who didn't actually row at school.
Yeah.
But at school, so I'm from the north. I'm from Hull, and it's not a popular sport up there. I think rowing is or rowing as it's pronounced up there is actually another word for arguing up in Yorkshire. So a lot of people wouldn't even know what the sport is. So I was actually a track and field athlete throughout my teenage years.
Hence the giant calves.
Hence the giant calves, yes, which serve absolutely no purpose in rowing besides leaving huge gouges in my back of my leg.
Yeah.
But so when I was about 17, 18, my dad was actually quite a big enthusiast on the rowing machine.
Yeah.
I'd just go to the gym and my dad would say, I won't impersonate my dad despite his northern accent. But he would get quite good on 1,000 meters, 2,000 meters, and he'd challenge me to do them.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, I'll give it a go. Next thing I know, what was my first ever 2K? I think my first 2K was a 6:28.
What? At what age? At 18?
At 18.
Wow.
Bloody hell. I mean, that's coming from a background of quite high level track and field. So like the fitness was there.
Yeah.
And
but even getting the pacing right on your first one,
yeah.
Do you think that was just luck?
Well, I was kind of going through a bit of a difficult time with track and field because I was kind of having, I guess I'd call it sort of puberty second wind.
Yeah.
So I'd suddenly kind of put on about 20 kilos from my sort of skinny distance runner days.
Yeah.
And so rowing came, I wouldn't say naturally, but, if you're aerobically fit and all of a sudden you're filling out.
I think the other thing in track and field is with growth spurts, it can really mess up your running stride. Like yes. I remember because I used to do a bit of track as well. In school, like a few kids would have like a big growth spurt and like they couldn't run anymore. Like it takes up the time.
Well, I sort of had all my growth spurts quite young, around 14. And, despite, sleeping in beds of Miracle Grow from my latter teenage years, I sort of stopped there. So I was a very sort of lean track and field runner for the teenage years. And
yeah.
you can get away with it when you're 65 kilos, but I am not now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I pulled some half-decent 2Ks and decided to start dabbling in rowing at university. And I thought, okay, my university wasn't the best for it. I had some great friends who kind of took me under their wing a little bit, but if I wanted to do it seriously, I had to put the degree on hold for a little bit and go join the Leander Club Talent ID system.
Which uni was it that you went to?
University of Hertfordshire. Okay, as my undergrad.
So 2007 was like a gap year, or did you go back to Hartford, or did you?
I did after we did our Henley campaign.
Yeah. So that was like a little gap in the middle.
Yeah, so I'd sort of done a sort of half year at Leander because that was my sort of novice year of rowing, essentially.
Okay.
So I'd do my own thing at university during the week, and I'd come down to Leander, train there Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then go back to university for the rest of the time. But it was our year together that I went down to Leander full time.
How did you hear about Leander then? How did you? Because like coming from not a rowing background in Hartford, like did you hear? Because everyone's heard some like funny stories.
I knew nothing about Leander when I was first starting. I just vaguely recall just Googling good rowing clubs.
Oh, nice.
And just shooting a message to this one. I thought, oh, this one looks nice, nice colour kit as well. I'll drop them an email, say, hello, can I come down and join? I had no idea that it's a club you have to trial for.
Yeah.
And it was it's Brian Armstrong
Legend.
who got back to me.
Shout out.
Oh, I do miss Brian. How bumped it to Brian?
I wish I could. I haven't seen him for ages.
He's doing well.
Good.
He's doing really well. But so Brian gets back to me. He says, come down, come for a tour. First thing he says to me was, I thought you'd be taller.
So, like, just to put it in context, you at one point, one of your nicknames was Shorty, like just to wind you up, but you are 6'1"?
6'1" and 3/8.
Yeah. So literally just under 6'2", yet at Leander known as Shorty. Like, to put this into context, the height of rowers.
Well, I'd also been rejected from World Class Start.
So was I, actually.
You were rejected from World Class?
Yeah, so there was a World Class Start program in Birmingham, and I rowed in Worcester at my school, and I didn't really, towards my college years, I sort of got out of the pack. We only had like a squad of 10 kids, and we asked to join, and they were like, no, because you're already in a rowing program, so like we're looking for people who aren't in a rowing program. Oh, great. Well, it worked out. It's fine. I went to Leander anyway.
Yeah.
We heard at school, so things we heard at school was like, you're not ever allowed to call it Leander Pink. They'll go mad because it's actually cerise. And when you turn up Leander, like they don't give a shit what colour you call it.
Yeah.
And then the other one was like, we used to train down there on a training camp, and we were doing some like seat racing, I think, and like spinning in the middle. And some old boy stopped on a bike and said to my coach, oh, by the way, we have an agreement that we don't spin on the course. And we thought he was from Leander. So like the whole one in turn, it was like, oh yeah, we're not allowed to spin like this. And everyone was like, no, like no one gives a shit. So you got all these kind of weird things that you hear from it. But I also think it's interesting because most people don't start rowing until 14 or older. People who've done well at it generally have done a sport to a certain high level before. So I think there's that kind of thing in rowing where it's never the first sport that people have done. Like some people say like Morgan got into it when she was 12, but even that was like transferring from another sport. It's quite interesting to see like why. So for you, it was really that you were long distance running and you kind of developed into a shape that wasn't suitable for that anymore.
Yeah, I remember sort of towards the back end of my running career, I was throughout my sort of secondary school life, I was kind of known as the guy who was quick, this fairly sort of whippet-like teenager who would just kind of whiz around the track and would win all the cross-country events. And then towards the back end of sixth form, all of a sudden I'm 20-odd kilos heavier. My friends would turn up to these events and watch, and they just describe it as like there's a scene in the film 300 where there's this rhino just charging through all these soldiers, and they would describe me as the rhino, just sort of sweeping people out of the way as we're going through these like cross-country meets. And I just wasn't competitive anymore. You can't be a competitive top-level distance runner when you're 20 kilos.
Yeah, I had the opposite. So for me, at school, it was rugby, absolutely rugby mad. And I was quite fast, so I played like out on the wing and stuff. But about 13, 14, everyone else started growing and putting weight on. And I was like, when I was 18, I was 6'7" and 85 kilos. So like, think like when I was 16. So yeah, I just just couldn't keep up in rugby anymore. And then rowing seemed kind of went down that way. I still then had to like fight to put on a hell of a lot of weight. That's Chris Collen just constantly telling me like, you're not 97 kilos yet. Like, you need to be 97.
I remember our Leander days. We were all on every supplement under the sun.
Keeping it legal, obviously.
Keeping it legal. Keeping it legal.
Creatine, yeah.
Yeah, I remember Al Sinclair and Will Satch dry scooping beta aniline before weight sessions. This is like 10 years before dry scooping was like an internet meme. And then just walking around the gym, just like
trailblazers. Yeah. Oh my days. Yeah, and because we'd go down to like the sort of budget supplement shop in Reading because you know we couldn't afford like the premium like massive muscle.
No way.
This is not that. So yeah, we just get nothing. I really hope we're so fortunate we were never drug tested.
I was a lot, so whatever we were taking was fine. Yeah, randomly.
Well, clearly, my performances weren't good enough to warrant suspicion.
My first drugs test was 2010. Me and Webby were in the pair, and probably 09. Me and Webby were doing the pair, and like literally 2 weeks before trials, that's when he did his Achilles.
Yeah.
Then he's like snapped his Achilles. It was literally like 10 days before final trials. We'd gone to Hazelwinkle, and as Dave and Pete will know, I am no single sculler. I had to turn up and do the single, so I literally rocked up, did the single, came dead last. Come in on the landing stage, and there's a guy. Are you Tom Clark? Yeah. Like, you've been selected for random drugs test. I think I turned around to him and was like, well, whatever I'm taking, it's not working, is it? I was just totally pissed off that I'd come dead last. And since then I randomly just got about once a year for about 6. I think I had about six drugs. Have you ever done it?
I've been drug tested once
because it is
but like
horrific.
The statistician in me thinks that like if you're getting drugs tested way more than I am, for example, like that can't be coincidence. Like are they looking at you and thinking this guy?
Well, so one was on an under 23 training camp. They just what they would do is they would just turn up to Caversham, get a list of the names of everyone in that day, and then just pick a few. So I just got randomly selected on that one. Another one was they did the same thing, came to Caversham when I was in the senior squad, and I got randomly asked to do it. And at Hazelwinkle, and there's a couple more. But yeah, I think just maybe being around in the team a bit more.
Yeah, I guess so. I get once you're funded, I guess you have to be tested. I got drug tested once. It was I can't remember what year, but it was at trials. It was straight after the 2K. And I think
you don't need a wee at all.
No, you're absolutely full to the brim with caffeine at this point. You've just finished 2K. You're absolutely exhausted. All you want to do is just kind of warm down, and you're kind of flat on your back by your rug, and some guy's just tapping you on the shoulder. You Dave Bell? I don't even know my own name at this point. Like the last thing I want to do is go piss in a randomly selected cup. Yeah. But you got to do what you got to do, I suppose.
I also one was Boston trials as well, and oh man, I'd taken a lift up with Dan Ritchie, and we'd finished, and Dan was like, we're getting out of here straight away, like I'm getting out of here. And then I got taken into the camper van, and then I did a wee, and then it was like there's like a minimum amount you have to produce, and it was like on the line, and you have to split it between A and B. So like just sat there like in this little caravan, like watching Dan Ritchie being like super annoyed. And I was like, come on, please. And then like the guy just let me get away with it. But the first time I did it was absolutely like horrific. Like the guy made me stand like in the middle of the room. Like the good ones will let you stand over a toilet and pee in the cup because like psychologically like it feels more normal. But this guy was like made you stand in the middle of the room, all in one all the way down. Do you do this? So like full midriff has to be exposed, all in one all the way down, top up.
Is that not how you meant to pee?
Yeah. And then he like with his clipboard just sits down next to me and just like stares at him like, yeah. And I just like I'd try. Then he was like, oh, I'll put the tap on for you. It's like this isn't gonna help. So I had to go back, start drinking more water. Then David Tanner came in and accused me of trying to like cheat the drugs test.
What?
And said that if he thought for a second that any of us were doing that we'd get sent back on a train quicker than anything else.
Wait, he thought you were trying to cheat the drug test by not producing enough urine?
No, so if there's a certain viscosity that it has to be, and if you wee twice and it's too high, they then let you go. But I was like, I don't know how you would, like that's like a seriously bad system for like, oh, I'm going to take something, and then as I get popped, I'm just going to like inhale 6 liters of water and hope that doesn't happen. Like it's impossible. I think he was just, I don't know.
Yeah. I guess there are probably people out there who tried to cheat the system, but I mean, you've just done a 2K or like some sort of hard race. You're gonna struggle to go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, enough about weeing on camera. So I guess the next step is to explain why you are the people's champion.
Oh my goodness, this is a serious throwback. So I guess I should probably kick that story off by saying this was all a very sort of tongue-in-cheek joke.
Yes,
The whole time. I'm not some sort of like uber charismatic demigod as the Facebook group might
You not?
have you believe. Not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think so.
There is a Facebook group for the people's champion.
So it all started. So I'd finished up my final year at university, and I hadn't really been training. I'd basically just had 9 months of beach weights,
Nice.
and graduated, gone back to Henley, thought, you know what, I'm going to get in a single scull, and I'm just going to start just training it loads and just see what happens. And by some miracle, I qualified for the diamond sculls.
Well, you're not bad in a single at all. We said you've got to put.
This was my first
Quite early.
year of like proper single sculling.
Yeah.
So I get into this draw, and the draw comes out. I'm up against a guy called Malcolm Howard. So Malcolm Howard, he won the Beijing Olympics in the Canadian 8. The guy's the size of a bus.
Yeah.
I think he was sub 540 erg. He was trying single sculling. He just made the A final of the last World Cup. Like, I have no business racing this guy.
Yeah.
Like, and the thing is, having done a few diamonds campaigns, you kind of know you're gonna lose.
But that's the cool thing about Henley as an event in general, is like, where else do you get to line up against Olympic champions?
So I'm living with Al Sinclair at the time, and this was back before the days of Tinder and Bumble and Hinge and all those. So me and Al we were quite big enthusiasts for Plenty of Fish.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So we were sat in the kitchen, on Plenty of Fish, trying to find girlfriends, and I click over to Facebook. This was back when Facebook was a big thing as well. And I've got a notification. It says, Al Sinclair has invited you. Al's kind of on the other side of the table giggling to himself about something. I click this notification. Al Sinclair invited you to join his Facebook group. Dave Bell, Diamond Sculls winner 2010. And there's nothing in this group at all. So I click on it, and the picture, he's taken a picture of Mahe Drysdale and just Microsoft painted my face onto his.
Yeah.
And that was it. There's nothing more in the group. But the thing with Facebook groups back then was that, when someone would make or join a group, it would come up on other people's feeds.
Yeah.
And this, back when everybody would just check their Facebook feeds. So clearly somebody else would see it. I think Jack Hockley was the next guy to join, and he'd kind of join and think, oh, this is really funny. I'll make a
Share it. Yeah.
I'll put a silly picture on this group. I'll put a silly video. I'll make a silly nickname up. And of course, the more people would join, the more it would kind of snowball. So
I had a look. I think there's like 250 people on it or something now.
Possibly. Yeah. I haven't checked it in so long, but it got to a stage where I kind of thought to myself, look, I'm not going to win this race. So let's just have some fun with this whole campaign. And so we'd kind of, we'd go on this group, we'd post my outing times, if you would like to come along and support Dave in his sort of 8K tech, please do come along. We had a little boating campaign, everyone clapping me out in a tunnel. It was fantastic fun.
Yeah, but that culminated in when you went to race Malcolm. We got like 100 people maybe? Over 50, I would say over 50 people lining the whole, both sides, from the boathouse to the landing stage.
Bugle.
Was it Nick Middleton?
Nick Middleton marching me out with a bugle, you and your brother carrying my boat while I'm sort of waiting to the crowds. I remember being in the boat tents beforehand, and people kind of coming up to me while I was sort of marching around the boat tents, asking me to sign assorted body parts.
Yeah.
You've got Malcolm Howard at the back of the boat tent on his turbo. I'm kind of signing autographs right in front of him while he's trying to warm up for this race. And then all of a sudden we're boating, and I'm kind of boating through this massive sort of, tunnel of people.
We made it loud. Like, that was the thing, because it was so funny because like obviously everyone knew who you're racing. Like there was no like trying to keep it subtle. It was like just like be an idiot about it. So it was just making noise. And
when Malcolm came out through the same time a couple of minutes later, and everyone's just, you can't beat Dave Bell. He came up to me after the race and he said, you know, he's a huge guy. He says, Dave, what was that cheering squad about? What was all that? And I kind of told him this story about how it's all just a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek joke that just kind of went viral. And he says, man, I was sat on the start line. I was thinking, shit, this guy's a big deal.
so it worked.
Yeah, we rumbled him. But I think I led him to like the quarter mile or something. But then his obnoxious like mega kicked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I lost by like 4.5 lengths, something like that. But
Which isn't bad for diamonds.
I mean, the thing with the diamonds is there's a little bit of a gentleman's agreement in the diamonds, but you don't win by an even verdict.
Yeah.
Like you chill out a little bit. You don't embarrass your opposition. Sari Nielsen, 2016, take notes. Not bitter or salty at all about that one.
In general, especially in a single, like in an 8, if you leave it down to 2 lengths, like someone could make a last minute comeback. But like if you're 2 or 3 lengths up on a single, it's pretty controllable.
Yeah, because the thing with the Diamond Sculls, so the following year, I raced Alan Campbell.
Which year? You used my boat one year, didn't you?
I did use your boat that year.
Was that the second year?
That was the second year, yes.
Yeah.
So I did the Diamonds 2010, 2011 and 2016.
Because I found there's a picture with that boat on with the Rogear logo on as well, with you racing in it. So I was like, that's cool. I'm gonna post that on a TBT.
So I remember that one. So you know, when you're in these situations against these guys who you're clearly gonna get pumped by, you think to yourself, okay, I'm just gonna leg it off the start.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and lead to the end of the island, get a few cool pictures of me being up, and then accept my fate somewhere around the barrier. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm on the start line against Alan Campbell, who's famed for his absolute turbo start. And I'm thinking, right, I'm going to put in the biggest 15 strokes of my life to get up against this guy. 6 strokes in, length down. But Alan, he was very courteous about it. The final verdict was 2 lengths. He had 2 lengths by the end of the island, and the final verdict was 2 lengths.
Oh,
So he was a nice guy about it.
yeah, I like him. Yeah,
That's what you do in the diamonds.
yeah.
So yeah, the whole People's Champion thing. I mean, it still sort of lingers a little bit to this day.
Do you meet people who you don't know who've heard about the People's Champion?
Oh, absolutely,
All the time.
all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I know it's all just a bit of fun, but if it makes other people, you know, if other people enjoy the fun and I enjoy the fun, then let's just play along.
Yeah, we talked about this. We did a little episode on just trying to keep the fun in rowing because it can get serious so quickly.
Yeah.
That like it's easy to forget that you're supposed to have a laugh. Right? And almost everyone who gets into it does it because they enjoyed it. They were probably a little bit good at it and they probably really enjoyed it and like don't race to take that out of it. Like I look back and be like, obviously the first year at Leander, the Thames Cup year was probably, I would say like as a whole year, like the career highlight, just as a package. Like even inside that, there was a lot of tough times, but like that was a year where like it didn't matter. We weren't chasing money. Like we were there to enjoy ourselves.
It was a fantastic group of guys.
So I'd love to hear how you recall that year.
So my sort of key highlights. I remember at the start of that year, we all of us moving into the Leander dorm.
Yeah.
And
which back then had 12 beds in.
Yeah, just a room, 12 beds, 12 guys, and not enough windows. It was, oh my God, it was rancid. But it reached a stage where, because I was working at Starbucks that year, and so I'd kind of, go to Starbucks, I'd work, say, 12:30 to 6:30 or whatever. So I'd get back to Leander at like 6:45, for example, and the room would be empty. There's no one around, because we were all living at Leander at the time.
Yeah.
And I think, where is everybody? All right, well, I'll just go get some stuff out the dorm. And everybody's already gone to bed.
We started going to bed earlier and earlier.
Yeah, like why not? So we just get into our bunk beds because that gives us so much extra floor space for activities. We just chat rubbish from like 6:45 p.m. onwards. I just think that was such a fun group to be part of. That's probably my biggest takeaway of that year.
That was crazy. We had it was you, Duffy, Andy Duffy, Al Sinclair, Tom Cannon, me, Matt Wells,
Charles Pitchfork,
and then
champion.
Pete Champion. Yeah, what a name for a rower.
I know.
I told a story about him the other day when he told us about in their pre-race meeting, they said that they would give them like 2 cases of champagne if they got through the whole event without swearing. And he was like, yeah, we lost that in 8 seconds.
I remember our 2019 campaign for Cambridge race. Our Cox had essentially kind of forewarned the BBC that he was going to swear quite a lot. So maybe kind of don't cut into his coxing quite so much.
Yeah.
And so pretty much the whole BBC coverage was almost entirely the Oxford Cox.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of cuts over to Matthew about 3 times, and every time just F this, F that.
Well, I always think on the commentary when they say, oh, we're just going to cut to the Cox and see what he's saying, and then like swearing, oh, really sorry about that. It's like,
Yeah.
What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, what do you expect in
Yeah.
this situation?
So back to the Thames Cup. Living in the dorm together, that was a great way to bond as a crew. We were only there for, I think, like 6 or 7 weeks, but it could have been like 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, I think that because you had I don't think Brian was particularly fussed. Ben Lewis and Chris Collerton were quite keen for us to not live there all year.
That's probably a good idea.
It's probably for the best. I think there's something like an 8-week limit.
Yeah.
How long you can live in the dorm for.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had to get out of there quite quick. But the dorm, yeah, it was a fantastic time. I don't think we could do it for a whole year. I don't think we could. Do you think you could do it now?
No. There's something about like being at that age. There's not like anything else you have to go. There's no sense of like, oh, I really need to get my shit together and get a flat. It's like, no, I'm 18. Like it doesn't matter. Like we're just having a go and seeing how it goes.
Yeah.
But yeah, go on then. What other memorable bits of that? I mean, how was it for you? Just I can't quite remember like your positioning in the squad, because I was really at the bottom, and like being my first year out of school, that first winter, I really struggled with the training. And to be honest, like if we hadn't had a few people taken out, like Rich Francis, Pete Randolph, they were both in the dorm originally. Al Sinclair was then told he wasn't allowed to race.
Took our three of our top guys.
Pete Randolph, this is straight away because he'd been to under 23s, hadn't he? And they said there's no way he was going to be. But then like Al and Rich got taken out after Eight's Head, I think. Moffat, yeah. So yeah, I mean, if those 4 guys had been there, I don't think I would have made the boat.
I must confess, I was quite naive to high performance rowing at the time. I know because I'd kind of joined the sport quite late and come from a not very high performance centre. I honestly didn't really have much of a clue what was going on.
Yeah.
Half the time. It's just, here's the program, just do it. And I just kind of get on with it and hope for the best. I never, it was kind of that sort of blissful naivety in the early stage of my career. I just turn up, do the training, don't ask any questions. I remember the first 3x6K UT2 I did at Leander. I turned up, it was something like, rate 18, something like that. I averaged about 146, and I was out on my back, exhausted, like gasping for air afterwards. And a guy called Mark Hunter comes up to me, sort of says, yeah, you shouldn't be going that hard on UT2. And I just recall saying, what's UT2? I had no idea what was going on.
I think probably like for everyone, like that, if you knew how hard it was going to be and you knew everything about the sport when you came into it, you'd run away screaming. Like, I think you need a little bit of that just naivety of just enjoy it for it, what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, because the thing is, yeah, you will definitely go through some uncomfortable periods in this sport, but having like a common purpose with a close group of friends, I think that's something that really goes unappreciated in real time.
Yeah, like rowing's tough, but it's a single problem tough. You have one thing that you're doing. So every decision am I doing this? Well, is that going to help me win at the end of this year or not? Like, you only ever got one problem. Your work revolves around it, your relationships, your friendships, everything just revolves around it. So it's tough physically, but you also it's like simple in terms of like, you've only got one problem. Like when I went out, I remember probably not even like a year after I finished. I was back at Caversham fixing some ergs. I bumped into Will. It was like a Wednesday. Will Satch. I was like, oh, half hour day. He was like, yeah. He's like, how's things going? I was like, mate, like sometimes on a Wednesday when I've got like a list of things I need to do, I need to call this one, this and this and this. I've got all this shit to do. It's like, I think like, oh, I wish I just had a half hour. It was like nerve wracking, but at the same time, like when you've got like such all the other crap to do, like, man, I'd love to just have that one problem to fix again.
You've just got one singular goal. Like, here's the training you have to do. Here's the dates you need to be ready for. Here's the standards you need to hit. It's, you might not appreciate it at the time, but it's actually quite a simple existence.
Yeah.
So how did you manage this? Obviously with high performance university, you went to Cambridge Uni to do a DPhil or a master's?
I went there to do a master's and a doctorate. I joined Cambridge in September 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what year did you leave?
I left in 2021.
Oh, okay. So you would have been part of the legendary crew with Mr. James Cracknell himself.
Yes. So we were bow pair of the 2019 boats.
How did that go? What was the year and experience like for you at Cambridge compared to, for example, some of the other like clubs and sports centers that you were a part of?
I have been part of quite a few sort of high performance clubs. Obviously, we've been talking about my time at Leander. I had a little stint at Brooks. I spent quite a few years at Molesey Boat Club as well. Cambridge is very, very different though, because you have so much going on outside of your rowing time. You finish your training at, say, your first wave of training at about 8:30 in the morning, and then you're straight off to lectures all day. And I know any university student will go through something similar, but having a lot to do, some quite serious work and activities to do outside of your rowing is very different to, say, the Leander Club dorm, where that is your singular existence.
Yeah.
So you very much have to compartmentalize your life if you're going to be in a high-performance university program, or even if you're going to be at a high-performance club such as Molesey, but also have a serious job outside of that.
Yeah.
So it definitely takes some skill and some work, being able to sort of separate out your rowing life and your academic life, or your rowing life and your job.
What was your like contact hours at university? Because obviously with rowing, I imagine you were training at least 10 times a week, and you would have probably had quite a lot of work to do as well at university with doing a postgraduate degree.
So contact hours, we had, can't remember my schedule now, but typically, so what did we have? We had Mondays off, if I remember rightly. So the bulk of the training was done at weekends. The way they would structure their training for Cambridge was we'd be training early morning and late afternoon. And all of our work would be happening in the middle of the day. I'd say contact hours wise, probably somewhere in the region of about 16 to 20 hours a week.
It's quite a lot. Yeah. It's going to depend obviously what course you do, but.
So obviously you'd have to manage like the exhaustion from training and like, all of the things that you need to do for your assignments, and also like keep an eye on nutrition and your sleep and recovery, etc. Would you say that was probably the most difficult part of it all?
Oh, definitely. But what Cambridge does very well is teach people how to do that. So I think, obviously, one of the challenges of running a program such as Cambridge is you've got a lot of people are coming into an environment they're going to be quite unfamiliar with. So you're going to have a lot of talented people coming up through the school system, for example, who might have never had to kind of manage their own nutrition before, or they've now got complete autonomy over their own sleep schedules. And a lot of people perhaps don't really know how to manage themselves in this way. So the first week we do at Cambridge, I'm sure Oxford does the same thing. I think a lot of programs would benefit from this. Is just help people make that transition to high performance sport. We'd have chats on how to manage your nutrition. We'd have chats on how to manage your academic schedule, chats on how to kind of manage your sleep. It would just prepare you for how to manage yourself throughout the year so that you can get the most out of it. I think so many programs would benefit from a bit more emphasis on that.
Definitely. You don't want to be setting yourself up for a missed success this early on especially you want to make sure that the entire squad's building similar habits. I guess it's really, really good to get everybody on the same page about how they want to recover, how they tackle nutrition, how they tackle, for example, stretching and other sort of routines, and especially as part of a squad. I mean, just watching the boat race this year, it looked like Cambridge is the squad that rows together more, has got more of the same DNA of like how they actually want to move the boat, both technically and just in terms of their rowing style. Is that something that was also there when you rowed at Cambridge?
Very much so. So we all had, it was very well communicated to us what the expectation was technically. And so we would quite regularly have telemetry analysis, or we'd quite regularly watch video analysis of crews we were expected to kind of replicate. And I think it's a lot easier to actually make technical changes when you've got some sort of visual idea as to what you're going for. If you're in the middle of a 20k outing and it's -5 degrees and it's snowing and you've got somebody just shouting something at you from the launch, it's quite hard to absorb. But if you've sat down and made an actual point of saying, okay, we're going to actually have a meeting where we're going to watch some video, this is what we're expecting of you, these are the changes we want you to see, then it's far easier to absorb. And something we also used to do there was, where possible, people would be expected to do a 15-minute tank session one-on-one with the coach. And so they have this tank room at Cambridge, completely surrounded by mirrors. And the coach would just sit there one-on-one and say, okay, here is what I would like you to work on. You can see yourself from every possible angle, which really does make a difference.
Yeah.
And so you can get far more technical feedback than you've got at any other program I've ever been at throughout my whole career.
Wow.
Yeah, from a coaching perspective, it's difficult when you're out on the water, you've got a plan, you've got some pieces and stuff you want to do, but then you also, your athletes might be asking for some technical help, or you might be wanting to do it. You're like sat there like on the rundown thinking, trying to remember 8 different things for 8 different people, so that when you spin, you can be like, oh, okay, 7C, this, 6, and it's quite rushed, and it's just trying to do. So yeah, that sounds like to like get that whole beforehand, and then for like every session that's going to be sat in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, if you can see yourself doing this in a mirror, you've got a visual cue, but also you've got some immediate feedback.
Yeah.
They say coaching's far more effective when you're actually getting it in real time and can go apply it in real time. Because all too often, you'll go out and do a long outing, you'll get off the water, and then you'll get the technical feedback.
Yeah, or you see the video clip a couple of days later or something, yeah.
Yeah, but you think, okay, if I'm getting this feedback in real time, I can make the changes while it's immediately there. You can make far more technical advancement that way.
And would you say the way that they want you to row was significantly different from how you'd learnt beforehand, from sort of or was it just a case of like, obviously you're going to have people from a bunch of different countries and it's just a case of like getting everyone to the same point?
Well, I always found this one of the sort of things that gets a little bit underrepresented when they're sort of covering the boat race. And I'm sure this is applicable to all universities. It's not just sort of, Cambridge and Oxford. But there's a lot of emphasis on they get up so early, they have to wake up at 5 a.m. And we've all been through those stints. That's not the hard part of these programs. What I always found quite an interesting challenge in these programs is that because the nature of the sport and the event generally pulls in a lot of master's degree students from all over the world, you've got 7 months to get people from all sorts of different high performance programs and get them onto one similar page. So it's really important that they can clearly convey exactly what technique they want from everybody.
Yeah.
Because you don't have 3 or 4 years like you might with a school or like you would with a consistently undergraduate squad. You've got to get people on the same page quickly. So there has to be a huge amount of emphasis on what they expect of you.
And it's a short season as well. You're not finishing in Henley in July. Your race is at the end of March, at the start of April, isn't it? So it's...
The whole season has to get brought forward 2 weeks. So because people don't actually turn up in Cambridge until the beginning of September. But by that point, you don't have particularly long. So you need people turning up fit and ready to go.
Yeah.
So the season actually starts at the beginning of July.
You give them pre-season training.
Yeah, you've got to log all your pre-season training. There isn't a set program, but you are expected to turn up fit at that place.
Yeah. Well, there'll be early tests, like first week.
Yeah, because the thing is, you've got 2 8s, right? 2 8s and realistically like a spare pair or a spare 4. So you're looking at about, you want a squad of about 22 athletes. And in reality, you're going to get far more than 22 people turning up.
Yeah.
You need to trim that down quite quickly.
Yeah.
So a few early season tests.
And then, so how many years did you row for every year you were there, or did you like trial for the boat race?
I didn't. I rowed there. I did Goldie in 2018 and Blue Boat 2019.
Yeah.
But then was having some problems with my back.
Yeah.
And decided to take up cycling.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah, I've heard about this. We were speaking at Wallingford to someone. I was saying that you're coming on, and they said, you definitely need to ask Dave about Zwift.
Ah, yes.
Which I don't know anything about, but
it's So you're familiar with turbo trainers?
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. So if you imagine, a turbo trainer, basically it just clip your bike to it. It tells you how much power you're putting out.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But imagine you can connect your power output to like a screen where you're racing people over the internet.
Nice.
So imagine like World of Warcraft, but for bike racing.
Nice.
I think that might work.
So it's like a world that everyone's in the same world and you can kind of meet up.
Yeah, absolutely. Like during COVID lockdown, for example, Zwift really took off because you can't have outdoor racing.
Yeah.
But people still want to have something to train for. They want to get after something.
Yeah.
So Zwift racing became a huge thing. We actually had a Zwift racing team of sort of retired rowers who would turn up, and we'd do this Thursday night team time trial event. So it was myself, Matt Nartir, Robbie Massey, basically me and Brooks, James Stanhope, Jamie Copas, but we also had the likes of Natan. We had the Belgian lightweight double would come to play with us,
Nice.
the German lightweight single sculler. We had a really, really strong team.
Cool.
We actually went and beat a few semi-pro cycling teams.
Oh, so you raced on the Cambridge cycling team for a bit? Yeah.
Yes. So I did the Bucks, and no, I didn't do Bucks. That got cancelled. I did the National 25-mile time trial championships in 2020, I believe.
Yeah.
That was fun.
It's fun. I've never been, cycling for me was always a bit of a depressing mission. I'm being like 105 kilos and 6'7". Everyone did like my wind shadow when we did the Leander. Just had like 15 people lined up behind my giant back.
But I guess for rowers, cycling is that thing that you do when you're injured.
Yeah.
So it's probably sort of, something you just associate with just being unable to get out in a boat. It probably feels a little bit miserable, but it is actually quite fun.
I do enjoy it. We did pre-season at Leander for a few years. We started doing like the first sort of 8 weeks back, we would do training rides, which were good fun, but all the lightweights would smash us. I'm just quite heavy.
That's the difficulty I had as well.
That, and then also Chris Colleton would come out on his bike and come and race us all. But like he was so tactical that we would have like a pretty heavy training program, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, weight, outings, all the rest of it. Then like Thursday morning, second session turns up for the bike ride. Chris has been resting for a week. I mean, he's a good cyclist as well, but like I think there was some tactical, like he liked to put his athletes down by like, fly past them on the hill.
Yeah, just sort of, let the athletes know who's boss.
I kept with him once, like I absolutely kill myself to stay with him up this big climb. It's quite a heavy climb.
Let yourself loose to your coach.
Then we stopped at the top. Like no one else had kept with him. We stopped at the top to wait for everyone else to come in, and then he just looked behind me. He was like, "Oh, was it you panting and making all that noise behind me? Was it?" I was just like, you bastard! Like even if I kept up with him, he still was like, "I could hear you were knackered behind me."
That was one of my highlights about our time at Leander was the Chris Colleton, Josh Davidson bromance. That was a golden era of trolling each other.
There was do you remember there used to be like a fund, an athlete fund? There was someone who sponsors some of the athletes, would give them like 200 quid each or something to go towards kit or something. Anyway, the year before we turned up, some athletes had got given this, and then that weekend they'd all gone on a bit of a mad one and got in trouble for like going skinny dipping off the landing stage and then running around Leander at night and upsetting some people who were staying there. So the next year, Chris announced in the meeting, he was like, "Well, we're not doing that funding thing anymore because we all know what will happen." And from the back of the gym, Josh goes, "Oh, what? We all might go out and have a drink and actually have some fun."
I remember once.
And he would just sit there and stare at him, wouldn't he?
Because Chris had no idea how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like Josh he was absolutely hilarious. I remember one time, so we had the power clean station.
Yeah.
And people would obviously do their power clean, they'd drop the bar down. It was fairly loud, it's a fairly kind of old, rickety gym.
Yeah.
And so Chris Colleton's one time just saying, right, okay, I need to get everybody to stop dropping their weights. It's too noisy. So we're in the gym and Chris is saying, right, everybody, I need you to stop dropping your power cleans, lower them down properly and get more gains out of it. I was chatting to, I was sat on the toilet recently, on the other side of the building, and all of a sudden I just hear this bang, 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 bang. Clearly kind of replicating the power cleans. And just from the back of the room, Josh shouts out, "Oi, Collins, are you sure that wasn't coming out your arsehole?"
He was so inappropriate.
The whole gym just like erupts with laughter, and Chris has stood there like having no idea what to do. So
Another funny time that happened, we were doing weights in Leander gym, and nothing particularly out of the ordinary, but some power cleans were getting dropped and stuff. And this little woman with a radio headset on, like bursts through the door. It's like, "Excuse me, can you all keep the noise down? We're actually interviewing Steve Redgrave upstairs." And like in any other environment, the people you were talking to might be like, "Oh, like that's impressive." But like you're in Leander, like we all know who he is. We're not really that bothered. Like he's a legend, but like we're here doing our training. He was from a little while ago, and Clive Kennedy Byrne is on the platform. And also like if she'd come in before and said, "Can you keep the noise down?" If that was like the second or third time she'd walked in, but this is like number one. She's in there like, "I'm important. I'm interviewing Steve Redgrave. You all need to shut up." The second she walks out the door, Clive goes, "All right, boys, watch this." Picks the power clean up, just puts it to the roof and drops it on the floor. And then the younger boys following his example. I can remember, like, I look around, like someone's like got the dumbbells and it's just banging them into the floor. So someone's leg pressing the machine, just going down, just absolutely all hell kicked off. Just don't speak to people like that.
yeah.
So you finished in Leander in what, 09? 10? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And then when did you go there afterwards?
So after that, I went back to. So I finished Leander in 09. Went back to go finish off the undergrad, and that's when I moved back to Henley to have my first crack at the diamonds.
Okay. And that was with Henley.
That was
Right club.
racing as University of Hertfordshire.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. So if anything, that kind of added to the sort of David versus Goliath element of it.
Literally.
Champion versus program that probably no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
But after that, I kind of stayed in Henley. I must confess, I made some terrible rowing choices in that year. I kind of joined Leander and had kind of, started to rise up through the ranks. And then instead kind of moved back to Henley, didn't go back to Leander, separate story.
On the next podcast.
One for the next podcast. And so I went back to Henley Rowing Club,
Yeah.
which, lovely club, great people, but not somewhere you go if you want to kind of be on a high performance pathway.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, I kind of came off that sort of conveyor belt of working your way up for a while.
I mean, I stayed at Leander, but I still had the same issue in that we, quite early on in our careers, won the Thames Cup, which then excludes you from all club events. And the gap between club and intermediate was quite large, and it took me 2 or 3 years to get myself competitive. So I struggled along at Leander. I had the benefit of being under 23 and doing some stuff at under 23 system, so I had some progress. But yeah, it's like such a huge gap, especially in sweep. I'm not as sure in sculling, but between club and intermediate is huge. So I think wherever you go.
Because we had that interesting year in sort of 2008 where we won the Thames Cup and the Ladies' Plate.
Yeah.
So we're kind of training, together all the time.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, there's always sort of about a 3-length gap between R8 and the Plate 8 over 2K.
It was pretty. There were occasional training sessions where we beat them.
Was it?
Yeah, I remember we did I think it was like 3 2K. It wasn't long before. I think it was after summer training camp. So we're like 3 weeks before Henley. We did maybe like 3 2Ks, and the Plate 8 just didn't show up that morning, and we just got them on the rhythm. Like, that's what arms body slide, right? Like Brian. Like I think back to that year, and it's like
Hold the line and hook it in. Like
just
for the whole coaching points.
For the whole winter, all we did was double pause exercise. It was like arms, body, slide, like just double pause. And it's
been rock over.
It's Mr. Miyagi with the wax on, wax off. Like, I don't think we realized till we got to the summer, like how drilled in our rhythm was and how much we moved together.
Because he always talked about how you have to drill this stuff in so much that when you're absolutely on your last legs and you're starting to black out towards the end of a race, you will still hold these absolute fundamentals.
It was the absolute basics. Like, Brian never got into anything confusing, technical biomechanics, and he was just like, we just do the basics right.
Yeah.
And
we were a crew full of simpletons. Yeah. Like, I remember Ben Lewis described us as, and I quote, too stupid to lose. It's our race plan. It was like, you can kind of distill it down to a little bit of a flowchart, right? Like, are you up? No, rate higher. Are you up? Yes, keep going. And that was it. We would just rate higher until we were up all the time.
Oh, it was fair. I've heard another one. I think it was a Ben Lewis quote. Was that there was only 9 people that day who were too stupid to know they were supposed to lose. You know, like, we were the only people that hadn't realized we were supposed to lose that race.
Yeah,
almost. Yeah, it was kind of simple, but then that's the best way, and we really brought into it. So, like, everyone just trusted in Brian, and I think that was a great thing. Like, I've been in squads before where maybe coaches have been a bit more outside the box, but then some of the more advanced rowers are like, I don't agree with that. I don't know. You couldn't really disagree with anything Brian said. You could really sit there and be like, are we going to work on anything else now? Yeah. But also, like, to give Ben Lewis credit, for me personally, well, we lost to Tideway Scullers at Met Regatta. They choked us out. Like, came off the start ahead and just sat ahead, and we couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Then we went on training camp, and then 8 weeks later we beat them by 6 feet. And Brian wasn't out on camp for that first. Do you remember he came out late because he had a bad back?
Yeah.
So we had Ben Lewis coaching us, who was coaching Ladies Plate 8, but he was splitting the sessions. He'd come out with us. Then Davy Jones got heat stroke. Do you remember that?
My one recollection was the Ladies Plate 8 going out on the beers on night 1 of training camp.
You mean the Ladies Plate 8 and Ray Poulter?
And Ray Poulter, yes.
Oh, stroke man. But I was far too much of a little kid to risk. Didn't they lost Charlie Berriton as well? Like, they lost him for half a day.
I just remember having a hungover Ray stroking our 8-1 outing, and Davy Jones was shouting Basil Brush, the bow seat.
But so Dave got heat stroke. So Ben Lewis came and sat in the boat for like a day and a half and just rinsed me. Because I was in the 2 seat. He just sat in the bow and was like, not fucking good enough. He had me doing donuts. So this is what I mean. It's funny about the different things that you remember. So this obviously won't register much with you because it wouldn't bother. But I remember just sat in the Thames Cup 8 for like 15 minutes at one end with just me rowing, with Ben Lewis being like, that is not a fucking catch. Like, but he sorted a lot of shit out in that crew.
Yeah.
I think without that,
I really rate him as a coach.
He's Tideway Scullers' head coach now.
Is he?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because one of my kind of key takeaways from that was when I first joined Leander, I sucked. I was really, really bad. But I used to think, okay, well, I'll just try and row pretty and technical. I just didn't really think to pull hard on the water. And so I just get annihilated by everybody, like, men and women. And one day, we're getting ready for this time trial, and Ben just says, right, if any of the women beat you, you're cut. And that was it. He said that, and it kicked me into gear. And the thing is, there's probably other ways you could have gone about that as a coach, but something I always respected about Ben was that he has no issues telling you uncomfortable truths if he thinks it's going to make you a better athlete. Yeah. And in the moment, I needed a serious kick up the ass. And he gave it to me.
We've had some I've had some as well before of him when we were at, I can't remember what we were, when maybe we were doing a time trial. I think it was like a GB speed order. And some under 23 crews had been invited, and we'd done the first one, and we just weren't there. And he came over and gave us an absolute bollocking, and you need it. And we discussed this before a bit. I think there's probably quite a lot of some of the things that he said, which people would now think is inappropriate or like not not safe for the workplace and things like that. But ultimately, if you're trying to be fantastic at something, you kind of need someone, like you said, the uncomfortable truths. But it's still the truth. And once you understand that that coach is trying to get the best from you, like me doing donuts, like he's not bullying me. Yeah. He's like trying to get me to row the way I need to row if we're going to win this thing.
Yeah, and in reality, you know, when we're talking about a sport, you know, high-level sport is all about marginal gains, and, you know, tiny little margins. Stuff like that does add up.
Yeah.
You know, if you are you're smart enough to be fully aware that could have been all the difference.
Yeah.
At the end of it all. So you've got to do it.
Yeah.
You want to be on the start line thinking, I left nothing to chance. I endured all the uncomfortable truths. I made all the changes that were required of me. So now I've got the best chance that I could possibly have.
How did you feel race week, or how did you feel finals day? Was there anything that stands out from that?
From our 2000 campaign?
Yeah. This is just personally for me. I'm really interested.
Yeah. I remember because I was living with a few party animals, to put it politely. That year. So I remember I actually had to come stay in your living room during our Henley campaign. I remember, so you had, this was back when the fireworks were a big thing on the Saturday of Henley, and the fireworks are going off, and I'm kind of laying there on this mattress in your living room, and Webby's kind of texting me saying like, you know, can you hear that loud banging? Yeah. That's Graham Benton doing roll-ups. Like, just going in on the Scullers format. I think, yeah, Graham Benton, I met him a few times around the erg circuit. Like, lovely guy. But, yeah, we were just kind of...
At that point, you're just trying to find all those psychological advantages. You know, just find all those ways you can put that other crew down to make you feel like...
Yeah. What I do kind of recall from that is we were very good at kind of, when we needed to be off and relaxed, we were very good at being off and relaxed. But when it was go time, like, we were fired up like nobody's business. And I think that's important because it does drain you being too pumped up for too long.
Yeah.
So I think if we didn't just kind of have a fairly sort of, you know, jovial attitude to it, we might have found ourselves just burnt out and not so up for it. But I remember our little pep talks, Davy Jones firing us up, Brian firing us up. We were up for it.
Do it for yourselves, do it for each other.
Yes.
I like that one.
Yes, absolutely.
And hands in, like the basketball teams.
Yes.
Didn't he literally say that, didn't he? He was like, we're going to do hands in like they do in basketball.
Yeah, we can do it. And we're all like, yeah, we can do it. Duffy wasn't particularly invested in it. But he was right. Because I remember we'd just come out of this little block where the stewards had come up and said to us, okay, new rule, anybody who did February trials is not allowed to do the Thames Cup in your crew. Yeah. So we just lost Adam Moffat, Al Sinclair, Rich Francis. We were pretty down in the dumps about that. But Brian, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I kind of respect how he managed that project. He genuinely got us to believe we could still do it.
Oh, I remember the first time we ever went out in an 8 that year. I remember it very clearly. We went down, we met in the far bay, in the singles bay, stood down there. Brian came and spoke to us, and he said, right, this year, the plan for this 8 is to win the Thames Cup. And obviously we won it, so it's easy to look back and be like, oh, we actually did it. But like, talking about setting out clear goals, like in Cambridge, like it very much was like, this is the aim. Like, this is what's happening. Yeah. And like you said, just...
A lot of programs benefit from just having very clearly defined goals. I look at some of the top programs out there and I think they are actually quite simple in their objectives. Yeah. You look at like Cambridge, for example, we want to win the boat race. Yeah. That's it. Now, there are other things that go on around that, like GB trials, for example, but they have one clear singular goal. Leander wants to get as many people into the squad as possible. Yeah. And Henley medals are sort of a supplementary thing that occurs off the back of that. Just simple, clear focuses. I think in high performance rowing, if you try to be everything for everybody, you struggle.
Yeah. And then, look, we were saying earlier, if you're going to name sort of the top 5, I mean, you've been involved in GB range to a certain extent, Molesey, Leander, Brooks, Cambridge. The only one that's missing there really is Oxford, but you're not going to do both of those. So anything from those other systems maybe that they did do well or they didn't do well, or things that you've taken, or do you think you've had an advantage potentially over other athletes by having seen how it all works in different places?
I definitely felt like I was at different stages of my rowing career when I went to different programs. What Cambridge did very, very well, they did a lot of things very, very well there. They I worked under some fantastic coaches there. So Rob Baker and Steve Trapmore, just absolute wizards, technically.
Well, both coaching in the GB squad now, aren't they? I think, yeah. So that
absolutely.
goes to show,
But also, the support staff they have, such as your Donald Leggett's, your Rich Chambers back in my time. The amount of sort of wisdom in that program. But what that program did very well was it was very accountable. Everything, all the training that you do had a lot of consequence to it. So I've been part of some high performance programs before where it doesn't matter whether you're pulling the big ergs or doing well in the time trials. The sort of pecking order of the athletes doesn't really change. It's almost as if the coaches kind of think, okay, here is what I believe the ranking to be. And it's very static. It doesn't really change. But with Cambridge, there were a lot of assessed ergs. There was a lot of swaps going on. And the thing is, you knew that if you did well in one of these assessments, you would start to work your way up that hierarchy. So it gave everybody this incentive to want to keep pushing on all the time. And I think that's important. I think that's so crucial for a high performance program, that people think to themselves, putting my all into this will give me a fair shot at getting the best possible result for myself.
Yeah, I definitely feel like for myself, certainly in the GB team, one thing I didn't necessarily like was quite a lot of the low down work ergs and stuff were completely unsupervised. Like, it was just like, go and do it. Like, no one cares, no one's going to watch. I don't even know if anyone's, you write your number on the board, but is anyone even going to write that down anywhere? Like, it just felt like it was like mileage for the sake of mileage. And obviously at a certain point, like, there is a base amount of training that you want to get done. But in terms of things like the 10,000 hour theory and all that sort of stuff, it's like, it's not just being there and doing it and going through the motions. Like, it has to be applied. And also, the more you just do something for the sake of doing it, the more likely you're going to bed in bad technique. And it's not to say that maybe that's just one thing from one squad, and it's difficult, especially when you're up at that level. There's like a certain volume of training you need to get done, and a coach maybe can't be there for every session. There's going to be certain times when you don't have someone. But it's something we certainly did when we coached at Oxford College. So yes, students all on different programs, limited amount of time, to make sure that when we turn up and when we train, like, we're going to be absolutely on it. And I used to talk to them sometimes in the boat, like, if we get up for an early morning session and like no one's really turned up, and I'm like, you joined rowing, you've woken yourself up at 6 a.m, you've cycled here in the rain, you've got warmed up, like, this is the good bit. Like, you may as well put it in. You may as well turn up now and like switch on and actually like come and row, because you've done all the crap to now sit here and go through the motions. Like, what's the point? And that's probably, like, for you from Cambridge, like, from seeing it, like, that's the aspect of having a short period of time. And I think sometimes you can benefit a lot by having something close to work towards. Like, quite often you've got like the whole year, like, oh, it's November, it's a 16K, who cares? But like, it sounds like for you in Cambridge, they've found a way to make you care.
I always think to myself, the measure of a good program is their ability to get older athletes to PB in stuff. Like, look, not to kind of sound at all disrespectful to some of the younger guys in the squad, but if you're joining a twice a day program from your college or your secondary school, of course you're going to PB. You're training more than you ever have done. It's going to come very naturally. But I'd spent, I'd been at a lot of different high performance programs. I've been involved in the sport for a long time, and went to Cambridge and still hacked chunks off a lot of PBs at 31 years of age. Like, that's the sign of a program that works.
Absolutely.
And what I think the big thing for me that I think made the difference, having gone from Molesey to Cambridge, was that at Molesey, I was in a single scull, training in a single scull. So, I could have a good session, I could have a bad session, I could give it my all, I could have a little bit of a lazy day, but ultimately I'm still going to be in the single scull. At Cambridge, there was at least 2 opportunities to shine every week and start climbing the rankings. And so every session counts while you're there, and it really adds up over the short period of time they have.
That's good. And I guess even like the takeaway from this, if people are listening, is to, if you feel like you're in a squad where maybe that's not happening, to create that for yourself in order to get an advantage over. So for me, like, that would, in my head as a kid when I was rowing, it would be like, cool, like, here's a 16K where no one else is taken seriously. So like, if I get on it, I've got that advantage. And I remember Brian Armstrong getting mad that every week on a Thursday morning he'd come in and see that I PB'd on the half hour again. I'd be like, oh, I bloody PB'd again. It's like, but he said I'm 18. Like, yeah, I trained at school, but coming into that Leander program, of course, I was gonna make jumps up. But yeah, Cambridge is such a like anomaly, and it must be crazy like sometimes to be just working with almost exclusively like British college rowers, and then post-Olympic year, all of a sudden you've got like some of the biggest names in rowing. The notable one obviously being you did the year with James Cracknell.
Yes, absolutely. That was that really kind of boosted the profile of the event that year, which I think it was fantastic. It was I think the event really benefited from a little bit of publicity that year.
Yeah.
So yeah, with James, he
wasn't the only big name that year, was he, in your crew?
No, I mean I'm flattered. Thank you for mentioning. Yeah, so we had our full crew. So we had Matthew coxing us. Matthew was the first person to win the men's and women's races on the Tideway. So Matthew, great guy, won the women's boat race in 2017. Went off, sung at Stephen Hawking's funeral in 2018, I believe. Like very talented singer as well. And then men's boat race in 2019. So quite a CV for him. But we also had Natan in the stroke seat, who I think of everybody I've ever rowed with, that guy was just the most sort of animalistic racer I've ever experienced.
In what way?
So I think that Natan is sort of 6'8", 6'9". You generally think like you're very tall athletes just shouldn't be quite so explosive and sort of quick. But there's a video sort of lingering around the internet of sort of Cambridge, but we were doing a fixture against Leander on the Henley stretch a while ago. I think it's on Cam Buchan's YouTube channel. And so you've got Natan, who's got the his go-go gadget arms and legs, and he's still rating about 50 plus off the start. I've never seen legs go down so quick. And I remember something had kind of got into his head that day. I think Leander had tried to kind of jump us off the start in the first piece, and Natan was kind of he wasn't in the best mood about it, so he thought, right, we're going to put this second piece to bed in the first 250. And the guy was just an absolute missile out the blocks. I've never felt so much kind of torque and acceleration in any boat ever as what I did with that guy at stroke.
You in the bow seat at this point as well?
I'd spent my whole career in bow seat. I'm glued to the bow seat at 1 and 3.
If you really get an 8 moving, like you actually in the bow will almost feel like you're lifting out.
Yeah.
It's probably not a lot in terms of how much further you're getting out, but from what you're used to, it can feel pretty.
Yeah. Like when you've got a boat that's kind of getting so much grip around the front, so much acceleration. Yeah, but the bow, it can definitely feel like you're kind of, on a bit of a seesaw at times. You get used to it.
I remember, especially when on the other side of the boat, you've got somebody like Natan, who's, like just an absolute monster. The guy's been training in his singles since he was a teenager and essentially just kept rising through the ranks. I know he didn't do a lot of crew boating earlier on in his career. It was mostly him being trained by his dad, just trying to get as best as he can in his single. And then he sort of kept trialing whilst he was out in America with Carl Berkeley. And I know that's when he probably started sweeping like a lot more. At the end of him a little bit back and forth when I was at Leander. And then, he ended up doing the single scull event at Rio Olympics, which, well, you have to be a certain type of a rower to, in order to, one, get yourself to the Olympics, and two, do that in a single scull and do all of that training by yourself. So no, it's great that he could channel that energy into the crew boat as well. Yeah. When we were servicing up in the Goldie Boathouse, just saw his name on a few record boards with the ergs and everything. So they've got the full package.
The PB board. I absolutely love that in the gym at Goldie you have like the all-time leaderboard for 2Ks and 5Ks. And I find it so cool to think that the current top 5K ever done in the Goldie Boathouse is also the world record.
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Tom George.
Yeah, Tom George, what was it, 14:53?
It's unbelievable.
What's on earth?
It's like not humanely possible.
Yes, as Ollie's Idler went also sub 15 minutes, so sub 1:30 for the entire 5K average, but he did it like 14:58, 14:59. Tom George, like, no, I'm going to get 7 seconds up because obviously, like, I need to make my mark.
It's
Absolutely incredible. Would you say that's due to the Cambridge program or just like how much of an animal the guy is?
Well, I think a lot of programs focus quite heavily on your 2Ks, and in my experience of a lot of high performance programs, the 5K is just something that they do shortly after Christmas, purely to tick the box so they can go do GB trials.
Yeah.
So 5Ks aren't really taken that seriously in this country, I think.
I would say that it's serious in the one that you do, but quite often you'll do one a year.
Yes.
So like knowing what you're going to do when you go into it, it's like really, you don't get a chance to go, well, I've done one, I know where I'm at, let's see where I can go. And it's like a progression through the year. Whereas like you said, it's just like knock one out, probably get some time off. You've been training for a year more, but have no more thought to it.
Yeah, like if you do multiple 5Ks a year, I think most people would get a 5K PB.
Yeah.
So with Cambridge, we trained for and did multiple 5Ks per year. So, you know, obviously it's a great program. It got me to PB by quite a lot on my 5K as well. It clearly got Tom to PB on his 5K. Whether or not that's just because the program is just more advanced than anything else out there, or whether it's just that it's targeting the 5K over 2K, I guess it's tough to say.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it's a program that you can do this twice-a-day program slotted around a full-time MBA,
Yeah.
and still produce a world record erg performance.
Yeah.
I think that show at you know, how old is he? Late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
So quite a long way. Having done stuff with the GB squad as well. I mean, that's a sign of a fantastic program.
Yeah, definitely. Agreed. Yeah. And then, so what's it like then, I guess, interestingly, in terms of any other event, like that run up when you actually get to the event? Like, I guess almost the media was a bit more mental with James being in the boat. Do you think about it at all? Do you just let it run over you?
So we had been briefed that there was going to be a lot of media attention around it, and a lot of that media attention was going to be predominantly on James.
Yeah.
We were all braced for it. And
It's not really something that bothers you. It's not why you're there.
no, like, you know, it's kind of cool, but it was a story, you know, that the guy has done 2, double Olympic gold champion, coming back from a sort of serious brain injury, had been hit by a lorry, had to go through so much to be able to come back. And something I always admired about James was that he made a real point of wanting to show that just because you've had a serious brain injury, it doesn't mean you're written off. You can still achieve a lot of very big things in your life. And part of his motivation for doing this event was to show what you can still do.
Yeah.
So it was a fantastic story. And to come back at, he was 46 on race day and still do that. Still be producing ergs that are mixing it with people in their, primes of their career. Yeah, it was a hell of a story. So you kind of accept that it's going to get the majority of the media attention, and it's
fine. Yeah, not a problem at all.
I was wondering a little bit, like, when he came back into the program, has he been training over the summer before to kind of get himself fit for it, or was there like a progression curve through the year where like you could see that old James Cracknell turn up like after Christmas or something like that?
Does he need to train? Does he just turn, like, has he ever needed to train?
He just flip a switch.
It comes out of his cocoon, like, ready to go 5:45 again. But, no, if I remember rightly, it's kind of taking me back a little bit now. I think there was, what's the TV show called? The Island with Bear Grylls.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was. So I think his sort of pre-season training was probably a little bit disrupted by, living on some deserted island, like fending for yourself under the tutelage of Bear Grylls, and stumbling across sort of, wild pigs that you have to cook, because that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I might have my dates wrong here, but if I remember rightly, he had been doing all this TV filming for a while, which sounds like great fun, but then got stuck in for all the pre-season training.
Yeah.
And the mileage he was churning out. So we're all expected to do, quite a bit of volume and turn up fit. But I remember seeing, because we have this big spreadsheet, everybody can see what everybody's doing. I remember him punching out something like 330k in 1 week on the erg.
Wow.
At one point. Like,
Wow.
the volume this guy was doing.
I mean,
unbelievable.
normally about
Rowers do 200.
yeah, about 200k in a week would be considered full on.
I don't know whether that was sort of just a bit of a crash course in trying to get fit, because it is important you turn up fit on day one of this program. So I would imagine there was an element of, okay, I need to kind of make sure I rock up September 1st ready to go.
I mean, you know, from like the stuff, I don't know him personally, but you know, like the stuff he's done on TV and stuff, like you can see that he's not the guy that's just going to come up and be like, well, I'm James Cracknell, so I'm in the boat. Like he would be like the last person to do that. Like he's going to want to prove to himself. I think that most would be like, I don't want to be there unless I've proved I should be.
Yes, he's been doing so much cycling and fitness work. He probably like in his head was thinking, I'm going to show these youngsters what I'm made of. Like, you think you can write me off? No. Just you wait. Like, how about this on his spreadsheet?
Oh, I guess like, was he in Sydney?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, Sydney. I think that was with him, Foster, Pinsent, Redgrave.
Was that that was his first gold?
Yes.
So, but Steve Trapmore also won gold in that Olympics, and
Yes.
Steve is now teaching you how to, or him how to, not teaching it, but
Steve had gone to the GB squad, so we had Rob Baker.
okay, so yeah, Steve was the year before, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. No. Oh, that's probably quite good because that dynamic would have been funny.
That would have been a fantastic dynamic.
I would, as a coach, I would have struggled with that, trying to like coach someone I rode with.
So I remember being coached by Rich Chambers while at Cambridge, and me and Rich have quite a competitive history. You know, him and his brother beat myself and Sam Knight in the double sculls at Henley in 2013, and I got my revenge on him in the mixed eights at Peterborough Regatta in 2018. So it's 1-1 in the series between me and Rich now. So. And then he became my coach. So you know, it's quite heated because obviously there's a lot of debate over who won the more significant race.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how there's any debate. How can you beat Peterborough Regatta mixed eights?
The course record holder. Come on.
Cool. Fastest mixed eight of all time.
Never let him forget it.
But no, what James did very, very well was he was very good at facilitating everyone else around him in the crew. Like, I don't think he'll mind me saying he wasn't the biggest and strongest in the boat, which, you know, at 46, you're not really expected to still be the fittest and strongest in the crew. But he was very good at sort of passing on sort of pearls of wisdom, firing up those around us. We had a big, strong, talented crew, but I don't think it's unfair for me to say we were sometimes not the most harmonious unit. We were a bit erratic in our performance sometimes, but he was very good at facilitating the rest of the crew and getting the most out of us.
I mean, that's what you want from like your more experienced members. Like that's the advantage you get to bring to it. It's something I remember about when we first turned up at Leander. There was a lot of guys who weren't really interested in talking to us. You know, we were sort of the new school. What did they call us? What was the name they gave us on the 8? The potato.
Oh, the veg.
The veg steamer.
Yeah. So we were the veg because we were like the lowest of the low squad. And the Clive one day decided that he was in this visitors 4, that he wanted to beat our 8. So he got some black tape and renamed their 4. He just put some tape on over the name. Yeah. He renamed his 4 the Veg Steamer.
Well, it's funny because then saying that Clive was also that guy who'd been in a few programs, who knew quite a lot. He was probably one of the first person that would like give you little tips. You know, like there was a couple of times I was rowing on the erg where he'd sit next to me and be like, "I'll try doing this, you know, stop dropping your hands into the front and stuff." Like, just like you said, like little things has such a benefit. There was also a time in the gym when we were out, I don't know if you were there, we were down, because he'd been doing this and be giving us quite good bits of information. We would listen to when he had something to say, and we were doing weights one evening, and it was just like us younger ones. It was just the veg down there, and Clive was there, and it was like, right, listen up everyone. I'm about to teach you the most underestimated exercise in British rowing. But we like having, now I'm telling the story, you know, the joke's lining up, but he lined it up like, right, listen up guys, I've got something for you. So we all like gather around, and he like goes and gets the dumbbell, stood in front of the mirror, and it's like, right, here we go. I just played a fast one on all of us. But yeah, you need that from the advanced rowers. That's part of what we're talking about here, like doing this podcast and getting people on who've been doing it for a long time. Is getting those little pearls of wisdom, those little things that can sometimes take you like years to learn by yourself. And you can then go and, you can just sort of do that. And like as a coach, I loved, like I had a lot of problem with my back, obviously. You all know about that, but I had an athlete. We were halfway through a regatta, and I was watching her walk away from the boathouse, and I could see her dragging, like kind of half dragging one leg. You know, when you start to get like the nervy stuff starts popping, like I could see her, like I went up to her, I was like, how's the back? She's like, no, it's fine, I want to race. And I was like, nah, like honestly, I'm telling you, like it's not worth it. Like we've got other events, you've got other things to do. You're at Oxford trying to do a degree. You need to be able to sit down and study. And like, that was like so good to be able to like be that person that you would have needed when you were in that position, but didn't necessarily have.
So I did an after-dinner speech for Surrey University about a couple of while ago, and what I did was kind of distill the sort of 15 years I spent in this sport into 3 key takeaways.
Yeah.
And the sort of second big key takeaway I wanted to kind of pass on to everybody was that no matter how long you've been in this sport or what you've done, that there is always more to learn. And something definitely kind of consistent with what you were saying about Clive and the role you see yourself slipping into now is that sometimes the team kind of benefits from having someone a bit more experienced who's looking out for everybody.
Yeah.
Who's kind of keeping morale high as well. Like if you sense the squad's a little bit low for whatever reason, you can be the one to lift everybody back up. If you see a young person who's perhaps not quite so experienced and looking out for injuries or nutrition, you can be the one to step up and help them. Like there's always more to learn as to how you can support these squads.
It's a difficult role to take on though, because no one tells you when you become the senior, unless like James, you come back after 20 years, like, and it's quite obvious that you're that person. Like it's for a while, like you're not that person. Then all of a sudden you sort of look around and be like, oh, I'm like one of the most experienced now. It can be difficult to take on, but there's a time and a place for advice. Definitely. We had this chat as well. So there's been times when people shout it in the boat and it's not always the best place. But yeah, I mean, like I said, those advantages, those little pearls of wisdom, as you put it, that you can give to other people. That was one of the best things I felt about coaching, and then obviously what's made this enjoyable. So what were the other 2?
The other 2 were that training smarter, not harder.
That's something that you learn over time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like actually, figuring out things like how to kind of pick your battles, how to make your training effective. But by far and away, what I consider the most important takeaway was to enjoy the little things in the sports. Yeah. I think that because there's so during Tideway week, the week leading up to the boat race, we all stay with some certain alumni. Yeah. So our whole crew was staying with a guy called Mark Davies, and every night we'd have different sort of high-performing people attached to the university or the event, or sort of VIPs. Yeah. In certain coming to join us for dinner, and I think it was the Thursday before the race. Cracknell brings along his friend Matt Dawson. Okay. 2003 Rugby World Cup winner. Yeah. And we're kind of chatting to him about Rugby World Cup and all of this. Johnny Wilkinson kicking that last minute winner. Yeah. And he said something that kind of really, really hit home with me. He said, whatever the result this weekend, guys, you'll never forget the results. You'll always be able to watch back on the events. But what he said was that, over time, all your little memories of the day are going to fade. Yeah. So after the event, just crack out a document, just write down all the little things you enjoyed about the day, all the little memories that are not covered on TV. Yeah. So that in future you can look back on those, you can kind of relive the day, all the stuff that isn't televised, all the little nice parts. Yeah. So I did this. I must confess I was hungover for a few days after the event. But when I got back to it, when I was kind of a functioning human again, I sit down one day and I was writing a PhD at the time, so your writing always has to be very, very structured. And it was just nice to just sit down and just splurge a little bit. So I sat down. I think I churned out something like 7,000 words. Wow. Just of little details. Didn't even think, just splurge, save as, close. You fast forward a year and we're in lockdown, and I'm so bored at the time. Lockdown's just been announced. So the boat race was cancelled a couple of days before. It was pretty much almost a year anniversary. So I reopened this document and I have a little read, and I hadn't said a single thing about the race.
Yeah.
Like literally from the minute the flag dropped to the minute we crossed the line, I didn't say a single word, but I just wrote pages and pages about all the little sort of happy memories about the day, all sort of funny stories about my teammates, just, stuff that would possibly be forgotten over time.
That's amazing.
And the thing is, it does kind of make you realize that when you hang up that oar for the last time and it's all said and done, the stuff that stays with you is the stuff you might not be appreciating as it happens.
Yes.
So, just take the time to actually enjoy the fun sides of this sport.
Definitely. I mean, I think that we always used to keep a training diary. And I had quite a good one. It's like a 5-year diary. So it's a little spot for each day, but 5 years in a row. So as you go through and fill it out, you get to see the year before, which is quite good. And like in general, I would say to people, and it would just be sometimes as simple as just like what my heart rate was, what crew I did, who was in it, what the pieces were and stuff. But then other times if something significant happened, I would write about it. Like there's one page that like pulls out really long because it was like the day Brian Armstrong sat down with me and was like, oh, I think you could like get a GB vest. Like, oh my God, like this guy thinks that I might make it. But yeah, you're right. Like looking back, it's about everything. It's not just about winning, and if you make it just about winning, you probably won't get very far. Like that needs to be your aim, but enjoying it. Like one thing I talk about is, the higher up you get, the more honed in you get on the specific things that you want to do. I need to get a little bit better at this, a little bit better at this. I say I kind of do it in terms of like taking one more step up a staircase, one more step, one more step, one more step. No matter what you achieve, you're always looking for the next step. It's like important to turn around and look at like how far you've climbed. Oh, definitely. And like a lot of people don't do it. And I think you can get really stuck and almost get bogged down into something if you never give yourself an opportunity to just turn around and be like, hey, like that was all right. Like I did some stuff.
At the end of the day, this is meant to be a hobby.
For sure.
As soon as it becomes, if you are going to judge your sort of, entire sense of happiness by the sort of results you get in your big events, it's not a hobby anymore. It's just a way of trying to kind of validate yourself.
Yeah.
And I must confess, I definitely went through that towards the sort of latter years of my career. If I didn't achieve certain goals, I'd be pretty miserable about it. And I think, looking back on that now, I think, well, hold on. I'm not looking back on like the results and the achievements. I'm looking back, I read back on these documents, for example, and I think to myself, the stuff that kind of, I enjoy the most looking back on all this career is all the little silly stories and all the friendships you make and, goofing around with your pals, the dorm, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
And this document, I've got funny stories about all my crewmates that I kind of remember from the year. It's just nice, they're the takeaways.
Definitely.
So we were told, so this is coming from a guy who won the Rugby World Cup in 2003. So this was, this is 20 years ago, so it's kind of been forgotten a little bit. But back then it was the Rugby World Cup final. It's England versus their rivals, Australia. Johnny Wilkinson was, Johnny Wilkinson kind of gets this last minute extra time drop goal that wins the World Cup for England. It was huge at the time. And the footage of that was just everywhere for years afterwards. But what this guy was telling us was all the little things around that. So, because he'll always be able to look up the actual drop goal and the match itself, but all the kind of fun things that he'd do with his team, all the little memories he'd have of his coach, for example, like that's the stuff that he wanted to stay with him. And then that's definitely something I took into the latter part of my rowing career as well. Having kind of written that document and kind of realizing the same thing, the stuff that stays with you isn't necessarily whether you won or lost a particular race or whether you hit a particular erg score. It's, this particular funny story with that teammate or how I felt after the coach said to me on this, like what you're saying with Brian, for example, it brings up a lot of happy memories of your career. And I think it's important that that's what you can take away from the sport when it's all said and done.
Definitely. And when you leave it, when you walk away from it, I sort of finished a bit earlier than the guys I went into the team with because of my back and things like that. So there was a period where you don't get to see them a lot because when you are out of that environment, everyone else is just still doing it full time and you're busy doing other stuff. But yeah, the takeaway is, you bump into people who you rode with. Like it was yesterday. Like I haven't seen you for 4 years, but we just straight away just get into the old, things. I always quite laugh with Webby because obviously we lived together for 2 or 3 years as well. And it's just like, we couldn't be more different people. You know, he's like a diehard Chelsea fan. I was rugby. I never got into football at all, and different things are into, different music, different fashion, everything. But like, it didn't matter. Like, we became friends through rowing and through that crew. And
yeah,
like, I mean, we all lived together as well for 6 months with Tom Cannon.
I mean, God, I remember we had such an eclectic mix of people in that dorm, and I kind of like it because, you know, I remember growing up in Hull. One of my mum's concerns about me kind of moving to Henley and joining an elite rowing club was that, you know, everybody would just kind of be, you know, posh toffs.
Yeah.
Nobody would be particularly accepting. And I do think rowing has a little bit of an image of that.
Yeah.
But having gone to Leander, having gone to Cambridge, you know, the places that you would typically assume are just going to be posh, exclusionary toffs, it is nothing like that at all. If you are willing to turn up and work hard and help the team and commit to the goal, you will be accepted.
That's the common denominator. You know, the sport has gone beyond being able to just turn up and have fun. Like, if you're doing it at that level, like, you all have to have that mindset.
Yeah.
I think that's what links you all together.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like, when you race, it's you're going to war, where, you know, with your mates, and like, obviously everyone comes home, but like, essentially it's what sport is. It's like a safe war, isn't it? You get to go and battle other people. And
so we had an after dinner speaker at one of our Cambridge trialates dinner. I think it was 2018, and this guy was SAS veteran, and, you know, something that he said that kind of hit home and stuck with me was that friendships forged in adversity are some of the longest lasting.
yeah,
And it kind of makes sense. Like, you know, with rowing, it's their friendships forged in quite difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
You're getting up early, you're knackering yourself out, it's freezing, you're in rough water, you're exhausted, you know?
yeah,
But, you know, even you can go kind of 4 years without seeing each other, and it's like nothing's ever changed.
yeah.
I saw Webby, we went to have the curry last week,
Nice.
you know, to celebrate his engagement.
I haven't seen him yet. We did message, but I haven't seen him. I can't believe it. How's that happened?
I know. But again, like nothing's ever changed, and you think, you know, there's like we've got Natan's wedding in September, for example. Again, you know, our whole crew's going out there. We're going to get a villa, and I'd imagine it'll be just like old times.
Yeah.
Even if you haven't seen each other in a while, the friendships you forge are so strong through this sport.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're from a different background. It doesn't matter if, you know, you're from state school or you're from private school. If you're willing to kind of, you know, be a supportive member of the team, you'll be accepted.
Yeah, and the best crew, like the best feeling I've had in a crew is like when you've spent that time with a person and you know that, like, when it comes down to it, like, everyone in that boat is going to end themselves for you. And then when you get to that point with 500 to go and your body's saying, like, no, like, you need to back off now. You're like, I can't, because he's not backing off and he's not backing off.
Yeah.
And you're forced into that position where you push beyond what you thought your limits were.
Yeah. Purely because, like, I do not want to let my friends down. You don't get that in individual sports.
Yeah.
I found. I mean, I think that's why I think single scullers are a special kind of weird. But having kind of swapped over to cycling afterwards, you know, you can kind of, you know, if you skip a day, you skip a day, like, you know, but you don't do that in rowing.
Yeah.
You turn up and you do not let your team down.
Well, this is like, if you don't turn up, the crew doesn't go out. It's not like in cycling, oh, one person didn't come today, well, we can still go and get the session done. Like, you're not going to get the session done. So it's a bit different in that respect. And also, I think we worked on it a lot when I was coaching, when I was head coach for both sides of the squad at Keeble. It was, you know, we've made with one of the mantras was you pull hard for your mates. So the more we can make sure that it is fun, the more social stuff we can bring to it, the more you guys who are all on different courses have time to, like, become friends with each other.
Yeah.
The more like you're going to succeed.
I think there's so many people you meet who you would probably not meet through sort of, you know, other walks of life.
Yeah.
Like, I would not have met a bunch of sort of very sort of, you know, aspirational, well-educated people if I had stayed in sort of, you know, track and field up in Yorkshire.
Yeah.
For example, probably not.
And being in that environment is infectious. Like, being around those people that want it rubs off on you. I heard the thing, you're a product of the 5 people you spend most time with. Yeah. So if you're going to spend time with 7 people who fucking want it, like, more than anyone, it's got to rub off on you.
Yeah. It's a sport that just drags everybody up.
Yeah.
I think it's a healthy environment where everybody's kind of accepting of those who are working for the team. You will all become better people as a result of it. I don't like this sort of rowing as a sort of posh, toff, exclusionary sport. I think it's probably one of the most welcoming environments I've ever been in.
Yeah, and we spoke that with a couple of other athletes saying because you don't row from an early age, like we said before, most people have come from a different sport as well. And because you don't have the sort of aspect as where, like, if you're a world champion at skiing, it's probably because you start skiing at 3. And if you did start skiing at 3, like for yourself, like there's just no way you're going to break into it. Whereas everyone in rowing at 14 is crap at rowing. So we all remember that time when we were useless at it. And I think that's what probably makes the sport a little bit more accepting in terms of like you all remember it wasn't when you were 3 that you were crap at it. Yeah. You were like 14, 15 going like, I can't bloody do this. Like that's 15. I remember like coaching, you would get everyone rowing well, square blades. Cool, we're doing 6s, square blades. It's all perfect. They're doing everything perfect. Right. Now start the feathering, and then you just add one other thing in, and then all of a sudden someone's trying to row backwards, and like someone's swapped their arms because it's just that one more piece of information just blows it out.
Yeah. I mean, God, I remember, still very much in what I'd kind of class myself as a novice, having rocked up at Leander, and yeah, I was like in fairly good shape and could kind of, do a half decent erg, and that's probably the only reason they didn't cut me. But I remember I was just technically an absolute donkey. And you had Lavinia nicknamed me Gunny, for example, because literally the millisecond the spoon of my oar would get wet, my arm would be at a 90-degree angle and my neck's disappeared. But it's like, but you think, who's this idiot? But they would still kind of help me try and fix it.
I remember one time, because Leander, you always film from the side. It was the first time we got a launch out that was following us, and we were watching the footage from behind, and every time we came to the footage, your head just dropped out. Like we hadn't seen that you were like leaning out on one side.
Probably, yeah, because I'm like, 6 inches shorter.
Trying to make up for it. But no, you're right. I think a lot of it, another good thing that you take away from a high performance environment is it's not how good you are, it's your rate of improvement. So if you've got an athlete who's absolutely rubbish, but you tell them to do something and they fix it and they fix it and they fix it, like, okay, like that's really what you're investing in. It's like, is this person like listening, making changes? It's far more important than like where you are.
Well, that's something I kind of that I clocked. I had a brief period at Brooks once upon a time, and something they did really, really well was didn't do this every session. But sometimes, you get down, there's 90 guys, for example. And
big squad.
You've got everything from sort of under 23 world champions to first year novices. But they would just put out wildly mixed standard crews. So you've got, world under 23 champ at stroke, first year novice at bow. It would be match dates.
Yeah.
So you'd still be kind of, working against each other. But they would set these sessions up to facilitate some rapid improvement amongst the people who are still coming up. But it doesn't matter, I think there's probably a lot of very talented people out there who would absolutely detest the idea of having to row some novices.
Yeah.
But it created an environment where whoever you were in the team, you wanted to help those beneath you come up.
Yeah.
I think Brooks has kind of become this absolute conveyor belt of Henley medals recently.
Yeah.
Because they keep churning out new talents.
Yeah. It's one thing we spoke about, and I said before in the squads that I'd done best in were the squads where they were kept even for as long as possible. Something Cambridge do with trial 8s and things like that. Like the more you specialise early on, the more you're going to split the squad up and make people feel like they're not part of it. Another thing in college rowing, which I've always hated, is like different kit for the first 8 or different blades for the first 8. Like why separate your team in that way? Things like that.
You're just really limiting the improvement as well of how quickly the athletes can get into the first boat standard. So, for example, it's so much easier to learn in the boat where it's you and 7 other people who are much better than you. And the boat's kind of set, you don't have to like worry too much. You can kind of like stay along for the ride. If you do that with pretty much all of your boats and like you mix up the level of abilities, they're going to even out really fast because the platform is just so big. If you can only focus on what you're doing in the boat, because the rest of it is set up, you don't have to like worry about steering or boat being down the bow side or stroke side or somebody doing something weird with the backwards feathering. You could just properly step it up. And probably in one season we got maybe I would say 6 athletes who have never rowed before in October to being in the first day by Mace. So that's probably the secret for Brooks's success.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like you're just facilitating the development of younger guys. I'm sure Oxford do the same. I know Cambridge definitely do this, but you start off the season. A lot of the early season is preparation for Force Head. So, you're mixing around the combinations, you're doing quite a bit of assessments. You have to take Force Head quite seriously. But then as soon as that's done, you're just straight into trial 8s. You don't get into ranked 8s until about January, maybe even later than that. And so there's so much opportunity in matched 8s to actually, have everybody coming up. And the top guys can still develop, It's important you give everybody that pathway to improve, and you don't make anybody feel like they're on the outside of the squad.
Yeah, you're certainly, in rowing, you're rowing as one, so you're only as good as your weakest link. So in terms of bringing them up. And then the other thing, Susie spoke about, actually, when she was at Brooks, the change from her from going to Leander was actually having to do stuff for herself, whereas Brooks, it was just like for Brooks, for the squad. And certainly, that's a great way to get you to check your ego. I've just gone and won an under-23 world medal, and now I'm back at uni, racing with a novice or, match fit. And I think that's important. You can quite easily get a little bit ahead of yourself, and ego can get in the way. And it seems to be something that Brooks are doing really well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we've gone through kind of advice to yourself. The final thing maybe would say was just in terms of life after rowing and what you do now, what sort of maybe are some of those transferable skills or things you look back on rowing that really have helped you kind of move into what you do now?
Oh, that's a great question.
Or do you not use any of them?
Yeah, oddly enough, 2KOs aren't a particularly transferable skill. No, I think kind of consistent with what we've just been talking about. I definitely think, wanting to help other people kind of improve in whatever they're doing is definitely very important. And trying to create a fairly kind of harmonious environment wherever you go. So I do a lot of sort of, maths tuition, economics tuition these days. It's important that you are always trying to create an environment where you're facilitating other people developing.
I mean, like you said, that's a great thing that you've learned from rowing, in terms of the squads you've been in and the coaches you've had, you can kind of pull those things out. Oh, that worked. That made the squad feel quite together, or that coach separating or keeping that top 4 on his own. You can kind of see, well, that didn't help.
Yeah. I'm just wondering sort of how transferable it definitely is. I definitely feel like what I was saying earlier about sort of enjoying the little things about the sports. It doesn't matter whether it's sport or just generally, your life.
Yeah.
It's important you actually take a moment to appreciate the little things.
Yeah, definitely.
I found it's very easy to get caught up in sort of the employment rat race, or always trying to kind of chase after those significant life markers, for example, got to get married, got to have a house, got to do all of these things. But just taking a little moment to just enjoy yourself.
Definitely. No, I think that's a super important one for sure. And I think the other big one for me really is getting the value out of putting everything in. So in rowing, you really put everything in, and you get the most out of it. And it's the age old thing. You get in, you get out what you put in. But being able to approach things and understand that they're going to be I'm going to have more success, or I'm going to enjoy it more if I really put everything in. And I'm not really interested in doing anything half-assed anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people say to me, oh, you're going to go back to rowing, are you going to get back in it? Are you going to have a go? And it's like, no, because I just won't be able to commit to it in the same way. And I'll just constantly feel like I'm having a half-assed effort.
Because definitely, as you get older, I think the opportunity cost of rowing starts to rise.
Yeah.
When we joined the Leander Door, I think you were 19?
18 when we joined, yeah.
18. So, at 18, not to sound snobby, but you don't have that many more sort of pressing life engagements, probably. So if you want to spend a year, you were working at the cinema, helping yourself to all the popcorn every day. I was kind of driving down Starbucks' share price. We did all of this stuff. And it didn't matter that we weren't really kind of advancing anywhere else.
Yeah.
To get back into it, 35 and 33?
Yeah.
I think we are now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be, the opportunity cost would be too great.
Yeah.
I think everybody feels that when you're sat there on the bank at Henley. You sit on the river bank and you think, oh yeah.
Yeah.
One more year. No one ever does that at Pear's Head. But then I think the reality of the early starts and the winter mileage, I think that kind of brings us back down to earth a little bit. It's great at the time, but...
So you don't miss it?
Oh, of course I miss it.
What do you miss the most about not rowing?
What we were talking about earlier about having a very clearly defined purpose and being part of a team.
So a routine as well, you'd say, is a part of what you're missing?
I mean, I have a routine.
Or is it the accountability? Sorry.
I wouldn't really say the routine or the accountability, but the clear sense of purpose you get with it. Like, you turn up and like it's whether it's, the guys at the door or whether it's the squad rocking up at CBC at the start of the year, you think, okay, here we're a team. We are going to work together towards a common goal. We're going to get after that. That is our singular focus for the next few months. It's just, you forge such strong friendships from doing that. And you do have a very clear sense of purpose and direction. Yeah, it might not be your direction for the whole of your life, but it's a short-term goal to give you something to really get out of bed for.
I think you also get like the feedback you get from rowing as well. I think I miss like I could have a really good year with my business, but like I don't get no one's going to put a medal over me at the end of the year and be like, "Well done, great year." Like in sport, I just quite feel bad when I was rowing in my career. Like both my brother and sister are at uni, and like they're doing quite well at uni, but like I'm here like winning pots and medals and stuff. Like they're passing exams, but you don't get that. It's like that kind of like feedback is quite good as well.
Well, with
like,
business, the only report card that you get is a paycheck, so.
Well, yeah, like there's certain other ways to look at it, but yeah, like that I think was something that I've liked and have seen how like it's obviously different in business or different in life after.
Yeah, you can. You can definitely kind of assess whether or not your sort of business and sort of career prospects are going up. You could judge that by a paycheck, but at the end of the day, like that's not like the sole metric for kind of makes you happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you can judge your rowing in the same way you can judge your rowing career by the medals that you're getting or the ergs that you pull. But looking back on it, that's not what's going to make you happy. Like, I feel like that sort of sense of purpose and forging those friendships in one way or another is probably like the key takeaway from rowing. But I guess is also something you need to kind of sustain once you hang up your oars for the last time.
Yeah. And I guess rowing's the sport you never really get away from as well. You think you'll get out, but you'll get dragged back in somehow.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm definitely tempted to start doing a spot of coaching here and there. So, I do a little bit of volunteer coaching, dotted around from time to time. I looked after the, like Homerton College women's second boat, for example, for a couple of summer bumps campaigns. And it's so much fun. Like, it's nice to give a little bit back.
Yeah, I like
It's really rewarding.
to see people fall in love with, to help people fall in love with a sport that you fell in love with and to show them the good bits, which I think is really nice. Like I really enjoyed that.
And also, something I definitely enjoyed working with this college boat was that there are people who probably don't, they believe there's a lot of sort of physical challenges or sort of, moving an aid very quickly are things that are just physically beyond them. They don't really have that sense of self-belief that they can do something like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I maybe pushed them a little bit harder than was strictly required, but to get this group of girls and get the vast majority from under 8 minutes, something they thought they could never do.
Yeah.
They were all thinking, I can achieve certain things. If I work hard towards this goal, I can achieve this. And they've probably never really experienced that outside of academics before.
Yeah, to achieve the impossible.
Yeah. Like, you can study hard and you can get really good grades. They're fully aware of that. But now you're realizing that, well, hold on. If I train quite hard for rowing, I can move an 8 really quick and go get blaints at summer bumps.
Yeah.
For example, they're, helping people kind of realize that they're capable of a lot more than they realize. I think is very rewarding for a coach.
Yeah, and you would have had coaches that have done that to you. So then to be on the flip side of that, I always think is really nice. Like when you have people who, say thank you so much for like giving me this tip or coaching me or whatever. You're like, thank you for like letting me have this opportunity. Like to be on the other side of where I've been. It's like really rewarding.
Oh yeah,
it almost feels like cheating. Like, I'm supposed to be like helping you out, but actually like, I'm having more fun here.
Yeah. Like you still get to be involved in the sport, but at the same time, you don't have to commit to putting yourself in the bin.
Oh, it's the best thing about row gear is I get to turn up to loads of events, loads of boat clubs, go and see loads of people. I get to go to Caversham twice a year, which is like the exact amount of time to remind you why you maybe don't want to be training there anymore. Like I don't know how I always happen to turn up on like a really windy day or the lake's like half frozen and just like, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think that rowing definitely it doesn't glamorize the it's maybe a little bit over glamorized because when you kind of watch all the like montages, everybody's kind of posting the footage of the pan flat water on the sunny days and the little reflections in the river, and it all looks fantastic. But oddly enough, nobody ever wants to kind of Instagram story here's me out in -5 degrees in the snow and wind against stream, and I've got my pogies on. Like, nobody wants to post that.
Yeah.
So it's maybe a little bit artificially glamorized, but
Awesome, man. That's been a really good chat. Like, it's been great to catch up in general. It's nice to hear some things from some times that we shared together that we that to hear it from a different perspective. And like, it's a hell of a rowing career. I think you should be super proud of it.
Cool. Like, it's really awesome to hear about everything that you've been up to and kind of the wealth of experience that you've gathered from being in all of these high performance environments. So I guess I just wanted to ask a few quick fire round questions. So what's like your favorite location you've ever rowed at? Like the favorite rowing lake or venue, or maybe like a stretch of the river, one that you'd like to visit again or row at again?
I definitely not Ely. Definitely not Ely. It's as you know, Ely's a absolutely brilliant place to actually go and train, but in terms of scenery, you know, it's absolutely devoid of it. I really enjoyed racing in Kazan.
Okay.
So 2012 we had FISU, the World University Championships. I was doing the single scull, and we were just sort of deep into Russia. So we'd flown out Heathrow to Moscow and then Moscow onwards to Kazan, and they built this. I dread to think how much it cost, but they'd spent, you know, billions building this new sports park for World University Games. And it was this absolutely pristine, like state-of-the-art rowing lake built in the sort of the poor half of Russia's third city. And it was just an absolute spectacle. It was just it was a absolutely pristine, wonderful lake to row on, but it was also a very cool place to go and just explore, to go see a part of the world that, you know, rowers tend to go kind of explore Europe, for example, like Eastern Europe, a lot of races out there, a lot of training camps in France and Spain, but to go check out like a fairly sort of unheard of part of Russia, no, that was an experience that you don't get in many sports.
Definitely. Russia's a funny place to row in, I'm sure. And what would you say is your favorite crew type or boat type?
Oh, I will always have a special place in my heart for quad sculls.
Sculler at heart.
Yeah, it's like sculler at heart. Don't get me wrong, like I've been in some absolutely fantastic eights, and I've spent a lot of time in a single scull, but there's something about whipping along in a quad. They just fly.
Yeah.
There's so much speed for not a particularly big boat. You know, it's a lot smaller than an 8, but it's only a little bit smaller. The last quad, maybe I'm a little bit biased because of the people I did the last quad I did with. The last quad I did was me as a 30-year-old at Molesey with 3 gap year students from Hampton Court, Pangbourne and Tiffin School. So me and 3 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
You did that with
Cormac,
Cormac.
Dom Jackson, Rory Harris.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Absolute units.
Yeah.
Dom Jackson went to under 23s. He was up at Newcastle. I think Cormac ended up stroking the first A of Newcastle his first year.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, it's the quad is an absolutely fantastic, fun boat when it's going well, but also to be doing, to be kind of, you know, as we were talking about earlier, that sort of experienced guy bringing up 3 18-year-olds. And so it's quite rewarding, but at the same time, it was just so much fun, sort of just goofing around. That sort of, you know, when you're sort of 18, we talked about it in the dorm. People are they don't really have so much life responsibility, and they can just muck around and just enjoy the sport.
Yeah.
I kind of got to relive that for a few months, and it made it such a fun project to be in.
I remember, I don't know if you were with me, but I think you were. We came and fixed the Molesey ergos, and you were in there with a weight session with a bunch of the younger guys, and it was fun to see you like kind of like in your element, and to see some of these guys looking up to you. And I think someone got a PB. So you were like, go and ring the PB bell, you know, and see like, ding, 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 ding. And it was just like, looked like a really fun environment, like really cool to be a part of.
I remember like that crew, for example. So I was really busy at work in the lead up to Henley, and I kind of had to say to these guys, like, look, I'm too busy to find a Henley accommodation at the minute. Can I leave this with you? Can you three sort the Henley accommodation between us? Yeah, of course, Dave, of course. Yeah, no worries. Really appreciate it. Go to work, finish work that evening, and my phone has like 50 Tinder notifications on it, and I think, like, what on earth? Like, I never get any matches. What's going on here? So this was back in the days of Tinder Social, where you could kind of form a group and like swipe on other groups of people, and so the 3 of them had made a Tinder group with me in it, they'd set our location to Henley, and they're just swiping on groups of girls in Henley, and just every time we got a match, they'd be saying, "Hi, can we stay at yours?"
So that was the...
So my phone was just blowing up with these three trying to find us Henley accommodation on Tinder. And I'm thinking,
So that was the extent of their planning.
yeah. And I think, like, you idiots. But at the same time, I think, like, just like that level of goofing around that you do in the early days of your sport. It was so much fun to relive that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any other quick fires?
I think who's your rowing idol? The person that you started to look up to the most, maybe like earlier on in your career, and maybe if that's changed throughout as you kind of progress through.
So someone I actually really kind of admire, who I perhaps, we always very much got along, but I didn't really kind of see him as like a role model until later on. There's a guy called Al Sinclair. So Al joined Leander at the same time as us. He was in dorm together, and he had a little bit of a rough ride because he was quite a talented guy. But he got pulled out of our Thames Cup crew. I think he'd kind of joined Leander to get a Henley medal in the first instance, and then it kind of had that pulled away on a technicality by the stewards. New rule: you did February trials, so you're not allowed to do the Thames Cup for Leander. In hindsight, that's a horrible thing, essentially way to kind of rip someone's goals away from them.
Yep.
And so he had a pretty unpleasant first few years, kind of trying to chase Henley medals while not being club eligible. But he kept at it. Like, the guy never quit.
That's what I think about him as well. Like, I think like my first year at Leander, okay, I won the Thames Cup, great, let's keep going. Then I get under 23s, and then I got under 23s again, and then I got onto funding, and then I had all these markers for that first six. Like, Al had nothing.
Yeah.
Like, he just kept trucking. I
Felt so bad for the guy.
Yeah.
Like, he was really good, but he just seemed to kind of just keep getting, these stints of bad luck.
Then he got selected for the European quad, then broke his foot in goal, because he was like, I'm not going to play football, I'll go in goal, and then ended up like cracking his foot. So then he doesn't get invited to Caversham like the rest of us did from that squad. And you're like, that guy should have had it. And then actually, like a few months into it, I got injured just before a pairs matrix. And that's where like Banksy's benefit was like, right, I know someone who's going to come in. So Al Sinclair comes into pairs matrix, wins it. And like, from not being in the squad, obviously this was like the new guys doing the matrix, wins it, and then spends that time with the team, and then goes to Rio, which was just like amazing to see.
The guy's got, I lost track of how many Henley medals he's got now, but also 2 like world silvers, for example. And it's harsh. Not everybody gets to go like all the way in this sport.
Almost no one gets that far, yeah.
Yeah. But the guy toughed it out through circumstances I think the vast majority of people would have quit through. And okay, maybe he didn't get everything that he ever wanted to achieve out of it, but he still achieved some bloody good stuff.
Yeah, and that is the measure of a winner. Is like, how much can you fail? We spoke this before about, like, ultimately almost like the guy who gets the gold medal is the guy who lost the most. Like, he's winning right now, but he's winning now because he's lost 100 times over, more than you, and he kept coming back again and just come back for more and not let it get to you.
Like, just one of the most sort of perseverant athletes I think I've ever worked with, and he got a lot of great achievements as a result of it. Like, real talented guy.
Oh, there you go.
Awesome.
We're going to have him on at some point.
I was literally about to say,
definitely.
We're going to have to get Al on, and if you two are in proximity, maybe we could do it together.
Hopefully he's got as many nice things to say about you.
Probably not. Still calls me Peanut Head.
Okay. So on that though, Dave, it was so nice to have you on the podcast and to hear all the great stories, and obviously see how you've progressed and faced adversity as well, like throughout your career, and come away with quite a few good crews to operate under. So hopefully we'll have you on again and get some more stories and also just a bit of a laugh. But
yeah, really good. Like, awesome. When we first started talking about this podcast, not having people on, you were kind of one of the first names that came up, obviously, because you're just well known in rowing. Certainly in our career, the fact that we rowed together, and we haven't seen each other for so long, and it's great to catch up. And like I say, talking about Al, I'd say the same thing for you, mate. Like, for someone who came into it late, like the achievements you've made and the stuff that you've done, I think is really impressive, and the things that you've learned from it and what you've spoken about it, I think is definitely going to help other people, and it's great to see that, you know, you've done so well, you know, and in life as well, and everything's going well. So, you know, I really appreciate you coming on. Like you said, like, I'd love to have you on again at some point. Maybe we've got 6 mics, so get a bunch of people together. Oh, we could get like half the Thames Cup 8 together and just chat crap about that year. That would be funny.
That would be fantastic. But no, thanks very much for having me on. Like, you know, it's always nice to kind of impart like any sort of lessons you've taken from rowing on to kind of anyone who's listening. So yeah, it's always like feels like a little bit of an honor to kind of share your sort of thoughts on rowing and how to get the most out of it as a platform. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity.
Cool. It's a pleasure. And on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.